In the book of Job, chapter 14, Job's answer to Eliphaz, who had questioned his integrity and honesty. And in the 14th verse, he proposes a question here that has lived with man all of his 6,000 years upon this earth. If a man die, shall he live again? With that question in mind, we look at the book of Philippians. In the first chapter, the Apostle Paul, dealing with this matter of death and the hereafter with this baby church at Philippi, he's speaking about the preaching of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ to those people. And he concludes by saying to them in verse 21, "For to me to live is Christ, but to die is gain. But if I live in the flesh, this is the fruit of my labor. Yet what I shall choose, I know not. For I am in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Nevertheless, to abide in the flesh is more needful for you." Paul concludes in these three verses the final, the termination point, the terminal point for man upon this earth from a Christian viewpoint. Now, I said earlier today in the message that we who are Christians, we make our decisions and determinations in the light of how this Bible and biblical principles have affected our lives. I think you'll all agree with that. In marriage, in the rearing of children, in the conduct of our lives before our fellow man, in our neighbor-to-neighbor attitude, all of these pieces and parts of life, when you put them together, you and I know very well that we have been influenced by the teaching of this book. And that is what has influenced to make the decisions which we have made. I'm amazed when I review my own life how profoundly this book has affected me in every area of my life. But you see, life is not over. The real capstone of the whole matter is when I depart from this life, where do I go? Do I, like the wise man in Ecclesiastes said, as a tree falls, so shall it lie? Is all vanity? Is life for a human being like the life of a dog or a lion, as he has said in the book of Ecclesiastes? No, my friend, it's more than that. And I'm grateful that the New Testament has not left us in darkness. It has not left us to stumble in confusion and uncertainty. But you and I can rest assured that what we have learned from this blessed book that has stood the acid test of time, that we can stake our future in it. We can believe it. We can trust it. And that brings me to one of the outstanding beliefs of the Christian faith, and that's hope. Now, Paul talks about hope in the 8th chapter of the book of Romans. He said, if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. And much of that 8th chapter of Romans is taken up with the hereafter, with the life after death. He says the whole creation groaneth and travaileth together in pain until now, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our bodies. Now, he says in one place we're saved by hope, simply meaning that our hope has a foundation to rest upon. The foundation of our faith, of course, is that foundation stone, which is Jesus Christ. So our hope is built, as the songwriter said, on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. We dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. There's only one heartbeat and one breath between you and death today. That's all. As much as I've traveled, it isn't anything uncommon when I'm driving to pass where there's been a terrible wreck, where people just the other day, I saw all of the fire equipment and the police cars and the lights flashing, and here's a person with a sheet pulled over them. They had been killed in an automobile accident. This isn't anything uncommon when there are several thousands of people that die on the highways and our roads in a span of 52 weeks and 365 days. So death is imminent. It's with us all the time. Everywhere you drive by a cemetery. You can't go very far until you pass a cemetery. A family today was showing me a country home, a log house where they'd been just recently. And it was a beautiful place, and trees and flowers. And the lady pointed out and said, there's the grave of a little girl who was buried many, many years ago in the front yard of that country home. In the Cedar Grove Missionary Baptist Church, my wife and I drove by just a few weeks ago, that church where my grandfather James, William James was a deacon in that church for many years. And you know, Mr. King was buried up under some cedar trees, just one lone grave there on the grounds. And I remembered the fifth Sunday dinners that we have had there and the baptizings. But you know, one of the first things I thought about when I drove into that church ground area was that grave where Mr. King had been buried many, many years ago. Death's with us at all times. I see it about every week when I'm here visiting in the hospitals. Death. There's something mysterious about it. There's something that man, he doesn't like to mention it. You never hear anybody walk up to you on the street and say, hey, how would you like to talk about dying? People will talk about the weather. They'll talk about world conditions. They'll talk about politics. They'll talk about any subject you want to talk about. But death. And in hushed tones we talk about it. And yet it is universal. It's everywhere. And we see it in the fall of the year when even nature itself withdraws itself and takes on the bleak, stark nakedness of winter. Death is everywhere. There's a line that where even the animals and the fowls do not cross. A dog that's 14 years old or so, his age computed like the age of a man, and that man would almost be a centenarian. You see, man's days are few and full of trouble upon the earth. We don't like to talk about it. We evade it. We'll bypass it. We'll shun it. And we'll even get angry when someone may talk about it. I have talked to hundreds and thousands of people. And I've had them say, Reverend, don't talk to me about that. I don't want to think about it. I realize all of that. But yet it's a stark reality that death is everywhere. But isn't it wonderful that in the Christian religion that we have hope? In the Christian religion, it is different from all other religions. I read recently when they brought the Ark of the Covenant, and those heathens put the Ark of the Covenant of Israel in the house of Dagon, the god of Baal. And the next morning, when the worshippers of Baal went in to worship Dagon, the god, he had fallen off his pedestal. I thought, now that's humorous. God has a sense of humor. They set him back up, and the next night his head and his arms broke off. And they decided, we don't need the Ark of the God of Israel here. Let's get rid of it. Because the God of Israel is the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. He's not the God of the Baalites. He's a God who lives. And thank God we have hope. There's hope in the Christian. That's why that I am an old-fashioned, Bible-believing Christian. I believe when I got saved, I got eternal life. I mean, I'm as sure for heaven as if I'd spent the first 48 hours there. I mean, I've got it made. You say, well, I don't believe that. That's positive proof you don't believe the Bible, because God gives eternal life. Now, that brings me to another thought. For to me to live is Christ, but to die is gain is my assurance. You know, if a man has assurance, he misses a lot of the pitfalls. I'm so glad that I do not have to offer the blood of bulls and goats. I do not have to do like the prophets of Baal, cut myself with lancets and cry unto Baal all day long, and Baal will never answer. You know, the prophets of Baal, there were 400 of them, and then there were 450 prophets in the grove, and they put on a show for Israel or for Judah and for Elijah. But you know, when the sun set, Elijah prayed a 63-word prayer, and God answered by fire and burnt the sacrifice and the altar and the stone, and they licked up all of the water, and the Israelites said, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." That's assurance, brother. Oh, we sang a song, and how wonderful it is and comforting. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. I'm so glad today that I'm not saved by Landmark Baptist Temple or by her ordinances, but I'm saved by a person. And that's why that you can stake your future on the blessedness of this text. For to me to live is Christ, but to die is gain. I have a great desire, Paul said, to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. Now, how could he say that? What does he base this upon? He bases it upon two things: on revelation and on experience. Now, his experience was, if you go back and read in the Corinthian letter, he said he knew a man about 14 years ago, whether in the body or out of the body, I cannot tell. But he was caught up to the third heaven, and he saw things that were not lawful to tell. No doubt this was the Apostle Paul when he was stoned in the city of Lystra, and no doubt died and was caught up to the third heaven. And he saw things, and the key to that whole thing, he saw things that were not lawful to tell. But from that hour on, the Apostle Paul could not pick up the pen of inspiration, but what he was writing about the other world and how wonderful it is. So, that's experience. Now, by revelation, God revealed to Paul that heaven is a better place than this. Now, let me take a moment to talk about heaven. And that brings me to something else, which is such a great comfort. You know, heaven, it consists of a great many things. First of all, heaven embraces a place that God occupies, and we know very little about it. It's the third heaven. Don't confuse it with the New Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven. The New Jerusalem is a city that can be occupied by millions upon millions and millions of people, because it's 1,600 miles long, it's 1,600 miles wide, and it's 1,600 miles high. Can you imagine a city 1,600 miles high? That'll blow your mind. And John saw it coming down from God out of heaven. It's the New Jerusalem. Its walls are of jasper, its gates of pearl, streets are gold. And it is a city of mansions. John describes it, in my Father's house are many mansions, or his dwelling place are many mansions, or abiding place. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Now that's comfort, brother. I stood a few days ago at the site of my old home place. The house is gone now. It's a ranch. Other people own it. But toward the sunset and then the twilight, I drove over to see the place again, parked my car and walked out to that area. And then I began to reflect. And naturally, my thoughts bypassed a lot of childhood and childhood experiences when I played, where I had my little basketball goal up, and where I did skip the rope and where I did a lot of things as a kid, where I played with my animals, my pets. But you know, to you mothers, the most sacred part of all of it is when I stood within inches of that place where my mother was lying on that bed on May the 6th when she passed away. What an experience it was. As I stood there and reflected, and you know what I remembered to all of you boys and girls? I remembered the beautiful smile that came on her face as the spirit and the soul left the body and went back to the God who gave it. What an experience. And I relived that experience again. All of the wealth in the New York Stock Exchange or in the banks of the world couldn't take that comfort and that hope and that assurance from me. I know whom I believed, and I'm persuaded that He's able to keep that which I've committed unto Him against that day. I am a pragmatist. I believe in some real things. I couldn't ever be a Christian Scientist that don't believe you're sick and don't believe you die and don't believe you're hurt or any of those things. I could not be an infidel. I think I'm too intelligent to be an infidel because I know about nature and I know it couldn't happen to me. I know it had to be because somebody created it. You see the difference? I know that. I know in this intricate system that we have in this universe that somebody had to design it. I know there's an architect and a designer. And then in addition to that, I know He has a purpose. And He would not be an untouchable God, but He would condescend to earth and say to His creatures, handle me and see, for the Spirit hath not flesh and bones, as you see me have. I tell you, my friends, there's a comfort now in being a Christian. But there's more than that. I'd like to suggest another thought. There's a lot of anticipation in this whole matter. You know, it could be a little depressing. They call the senior citizen age the golden age. Some nuthead did that. He wasn't very intelligent to call it the golden age. I don't know where he got that with all of the aches and pains and hurts and everything that goes with life. Who in the world whoever concocted that idea? You read the 12th chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes. It's a rather depressing description of the end of life. I don't ever intend to grow old gracefully. There's not any glory in that whatsoever. I'm going to fight it and kick it and chew it and spit on it because old age is contrary to the whole personality of God. Do you understand that? Old age is a result of sin. You ought to understand that. Adam and Eve's body was never created to die. They were created to live. But because they listened to the tempter, they hid themselves when they had participated of the evil, and they hid themselves from God. You'd have to be nuts to say you enjoy sickness, would you not? You endure sickness. You don't enjoy it. You'd have to be, your elevator wouldn't go to the top if you enjoy sickness. Well then, who enjoys old age? I know my preaching is contrary to a lot of the foolish thinking of people today, but you need to get your thinking set straight. It's like I told you earlier today. It's like I read this, I think in the Los Angeles Times the other day, where two planes nearly collided, and the writer said it was a near miss. Well, he's nuts. It was a near hit. It wasn't a near miss. They almost collided. And there are many things in life that we're not able to adjust to it. You'll say, well, if I had your beliefs, I wouldn't enjoy life. You'd enjoy it a whole lot more than you would living in a make-believe life. You don't enjoy anything when you're living a make-believe life. You want me to prove it to you? Talk to Janis Joplin, Elvis Presley, Lucy. Talk to those who commit suicide. Oh, come on. Talk to Adolf Hitler. Talk to the witch of Endor. Who are you kidding? You need to understand really what life. You'll never be able to face death like you ought to until you're able to face life like you should. When you're able to handle life, you can handle death. And I've got news for you, because you're going to die. All right, then, if that be the case, you need to handle death like you handle sickness. You don't just lie down and say, come on, sickness, I'm going to enjoy you. I'll wait for you. You'll do everything that you possibly can to stay well. All right, now, I want to talk about the anticipation of something that's better. I don't want it to be depressing. You and I would be desperate if we had to live in an environment, in a situation like we have today. Do you enjoy all of the killings and the mutilation, all of the disasters we have in this world? If the newspapers are publishing it right, millions of people are hungry and starving, and the dreaded disease of AIDS that's fast enveloping this whole world system. And they claim that in the 1990s, by 2002, there will be over 100 million people that will have AIDS if something isn't done. You see all of these published reports. Who are you kidding? Why don't you start living? Well, the only way you can really start living is get in this book and find out really what God has to say about it. I'm not depressed. I think I may be living when Jesus comes. And I might go without dying, and that's an anticipation to think about. Something's going to get better. It's not going to get worse for the Christian. All men have an appointment with death, so the Christian is no better than the sinner in that respect. However, there's going to be millions of Christians living when Jesus comes, and they will go without dying. They'll be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, when that trumpet sounds. And I'll get back to that, but I want to talk to you about another proposition. You know what it is? And that's rest. There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. The 4th chapter of the book of Hebrews has a great deal to say about it. In the book of the Revelation, John rose to great heights of revelation when he said, Blessed are the dead that die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, they do rest from their labors, and their works follow them. Have you ever stood by the bedside of somebody and they've said, I'm so tired, I want to go on? My nephew that died a few weeks ago said to his sister, before he drifted into unconsciousness, he said to her, honey, I'm so tired, I can't fight it any longer. Years ago, I was in the hospital in a major operation, and I'll never forget that night when Mrs. Gurman, that dear, sweet lady nurse that stood with me all night, I said to her, if I can but make it till the morning, maybe I'll make it. But I was so tired, I felt like I could not make it through the night. Have you ever sat with a loved one and you'd think, well, surely it must be about daylight, and you'd look and it's not quite 11 o'clock. And after a while you looked at the watch again and it was 11:15. And then you waited, it seemed like an endless eternity, and looked and the clock hadn't yet struck 12. And on through the night, how the hours do drag. You see, my friend, we'll get tired down here after a while. And it will not be long until we'll be at rest. I love that. The old prophets, they talked about it. That rest that remaineth to the people of God. Just think about it. When we gather around that throne in Jerusalem, and when our King is reigning gloriously, and we'll rest. Men will beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hook. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Neither shall they learn war anymore. The nations will be at rest. And they'll say one to another, come, let us go up to the house of the God of Jacob, up to Jerusalem, and let him teach us of his ways, and we'll walk in his paths. For the word of the Lord shall go forth from Jerusalem, and his law from Mount Zion. What a glorious hour that's going to be. My, what we Christians have. Rest from our labors. And those who have labored long and faithfully, we think about those beloved missionaries like Fred Donaldson, Adrian Judson, Livingston, and all of the great men, and the Apostle Paul, and all of them. Think what it'll mean when we can gather with them. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs, the prophets. What a thrill it'll be to talk to Elijah and Elisha and the men of God. Beloved, are you really with me? For to me to live is suffering. It's going through some valleys. It's growing old. It's having diseases. It's knowing that you're headed toward the end. Sure, that's not depressing. Thank God on the other side is victory. And that's what I want to close with. We sing, oh, victory in Jesus. Do we really mean it? When the weapons of this warfare are laid down and we'll be robed in incorruption, we'll have glorious bodies fashioned like unto his glorious body. We'll never know what it means to shed another tear, to see another gray hair, or to hear the sigh of those that have grown weary with the journey of life. My God of mercy, people. I don't see how you stand it. I spent some time recently, just a short distance from a retirement center, and the restaurant where I eat, a lot of those people would come to eat, and I would see them, and I marveled at them. I'd see them come in on crutches. I'd see them; their bodies would be shaking. I'd see women sitting all hunched over; they could barely walk, and they could hardly read the menu. Some of them could hardly feed themselves. At one time, no doubt, they were beautiful young ladies, full of life and vigor and the desire to live and to laugh and to play. But here's old age and decrepitude has come on, and the days of youth and mirth have gone. You say, I watched them. I wonder who will, if anyone will smile. You know, they talked, but they did not smile. There was a somber look on their face. Man trudges all the way toward the grave. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, that's not all of it. That's not it. There's Victory Day coming. Thank God. Like my beloved friend who preached that marvelous message from this pulpit, that sainted minister of God, that great orator, Dr. R.G. Lee. Oh, how he preached on the Lordship of Christ from this pulpit. And you know, he was in his 90s living with his daughter. And he had this testimony as he was dying. He said to his daughter, honey, I see Mama. How beautiful she is. Now, this is a 93-year-old man talking. And remember that his mother died when he was only 2 years old. He was not hallucinating. But he said, I see Mama. She's so beautiful. What a beautiful city. I can't believe it. And then he came back and he said to his daughter, honey, didn't you see them? It's so beautiful. She said, no, Daddy, I really didn't see him. And then again, and 3 times, the great R.G. Lee, the doors were opened and he could see. He was totally conscious. He was not under sedation. And then his soul and spirit went back to God who gave it. He had lifted his little frail arms and hands in glorious anticipation, because he had seen heaven open. That, my friends, is the hope of the Christian. Oh, listen, don't take it away from us. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my word My word will not pass away. When this old world is burning, and when men have ceased to march with their armies, when the last plane has soared through the sky, the last ruler has laid down his sword, thank God we live on and on and on. What a hope that is. For to me to live is Christ, but to die is gain. Oh, glory to God. How wonderful it is. And that's our hope. We didn't have to work for it. We didn't have to buy it. We didn't have to earn it. But it's a gift of God. I close by saying, like Paul of old, thanks be unto God for His unspeakable gift. And lost man and lost woman, young person, you too can have the same experience. You know, I heard a young ball player say earlier today, I thank the Lord for what I have. Oh, that men would thank God for His goodness and for His wonderful works toward the children of men. Wouldn't it be wonderful in Wall Street and the New York Stock Exchange and the Tokyo Exchange and the Berlin Exchange and all over the world where men of finance and commerce, if they just pause a moment and say, all that we have has come from God, the giver of every good and perfect gift. Wouldn't it be wonderful if all of us would just say, I know the health I have. I know that all the blessings that I have come from a merciful God. You wouldn't take His name in vain anymore. You would love Him with all your soul, mind, and body and strength because of what He's done for you, for what He's given to you, and what He's able to give. Yes, indeed, for to me to live is Christ, but to die is gain. And when earth's armies have ceased to march, and every molecule and every atom has burned to a crisp, thank God somewhere out yonder in infinitude we'll still be living. And we'll live forever and forever. And I'll see my loved ones again. Let's stand for prayer. Heavenly Father, our hope is in Thee. Our trust is in Thee. And may it have been made plain so that lost men, boys and girls, men and women will come to the Savior. They will not harden their hearts against the light, but will be willing to come as You call to them in tender mercy. Keep your heads bowed a moment. Could I ask you, are you really saved? If you are and you're a member of this church, lift your hand. Thank you. How many of you are our guests? You're really saved, but you're a guest here. Lift your hand. Thank you. How many of you could not lift your hand? There's a concern. You're certainly interested. You're interested in your soul. You're interested in your eternity. You'd like to say, Preacher Rawlings, I'd like to have what you've talked about. Would you lift your hand? Let me pray for you. Keep your head.